Hello, everyone. Welcome to Masters in Travel. I'm your host, Whitney. One of the most common topics or
Welcome to the
conversation
Masters
types
in
of
Travel
things that I hear
podcast,
about
where we
amongst
dive deep
advisors
into the
and
world
with
of
myself
travel entrepreneurship.
is the
Whether you're a seasoned pro or just
overabundance
starting
of
out, join us
content
as
that
we
we
explore
have
the
from our
ins and outs
travels, which
and highs
is
and lows
such a
of
beautiful
building
problem
and
to have,
scaling a
quite honestly.
successful travel business.
And
This is your
not
opportunity
only
to
how
gain
to
new
use it
insights
and
and
how to
perspectives from
strategize
some
around
of
it,
the
but how to
best
like
and most
really,
creative
really
in the industry.
maximize
I'm
the full
Brianna, founder of
capacity of
Milk
the
and Honey
content.
Travels.
And I'm
So
Whitney, owner
there's
of Undiscovered Sunsets
one
and
very
The
specific
Hive.
person that
We're
immediately
thrilled to
came to
have you
mind when
along
I
in
said,
this
I want to
journey.
talk about
Think of
this.
this
And of
podcast
course,
as your
it's none other than
first-class
Kaytee
ticket to
Fisher from
candid
Moxie and Forth.
conversations and
So great to have you
invaluable
back, Kaytee.
insights.
Thank
From
you for having
navigating
me.
industry trends to
We saw
mastering
each other a
marketing
couple weeks
strategies,
ago
we
recording
cover
another
it all.
podcast. I feel
So
like
grab
we
your
should
headphones,
just
tune
keep
in,
this
and
going
let's
every
embark
few
on this
weeks.
journey together.
Great. We could talk about it at length.
Okay, so I know what I'm hearing on my side and what I'm personally experiencing. Anyone who's heard me talk on more than one podcast definitely knows that I am notorious for the overabundance of content that I have and going on a fam and coming home and never talking about it and no one knows that I was gone. I get Instagram memes about it being sent to me from travel advisors giving me a hard time. I mean, it's like, this is a well-known thing. But I'm curious to know from your side, from the marketing side with the advisors that you're engaging with, just on the general umbrella topic of the overabundance of content, what are kind of some of the key questions or challenges that kind of rise to the top that you feel like you hear about most often?
Yeah. Boy. And now I'm having flashbacks to when I was an advisor. It's still sitting on 2,500 photos from South Africa. So
I
get it.
have thousands from like the last 18 months that I just,
so much.
It's embarrassing.
I'm like, I should at least make a scrapbook or something. But from a marketing perspective,
Yeah.
I would say there are two main issues, but I'm sure if we talked long enough, we'd come up with more. I think one of the key issues is that the content goes unused because you come home from a trip, whether it's a fam or your personal vacation, and you're like, yeah, I have all these great ideas for social posts or newsletters or blogs. And then life just starts lifing and you're back into your inbox and clients need you and your family needs you and you never get around to it. So you throw a few stories on Instagram and you hope for the best.
Yeah.
And then that's where the second issue comes in that I'm seeing, at least on the email marketing side, but also I'm hyper vigilant over on social media, is that the content's not being used well. So I see a lot of advisors posting, really well while they're in destination, but then they come home and it's crickets. You never hear about it again. And I think, another issue that I'm seeing as well is we tend to post from the advisor perspective of like, look at this cool thing I get to do for my job. And it needs to be a little bit more client facing. Why should people care that you get to go on this awesome trip?
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a combination of things, but really the core issue is not having a long-term strategy so that you can maximize your ROI on these trips.
So in addition to what you've shared, I guess the question that has kind of come up for me and for like in conversations with my with the content copywriter that I work with like on a regular basis is like, we can talk about what's happening right now, where I'm traveling next month, et cetera. But like the reality is like, if we just think back over the last 2 years, we don't even have to go back that far. I travel on, I don't know, let's say 4 trips per year that generate a lot of content that are super aligned with what I want to sell and with my clients and whatnot. And so it almost feels like even if we do have a strategy and even if we are very actively like posting and talking about different things, that there's just still just piles of photos and videos or like little, Instagram style video snippets and blogs that could be written and ideas for a newsletter. And so it's almost just like any type of strategy conversation I've ever had has been how to plan right before, what to do while you're there, and then what to do immediately when you get home. And I think what I've never really heard anyone talk about is like, how do we pull back in this amazing content 6 to 12 to 18 months later to continue just like squeezing the juice out of all of this goodness that we have like gone and all this expertise that we've gathered and all of the content that we've gathered. So that's in addition to everything you're saying. Like that's kind of where my mind has been lately.
Yeah. I would say there's a couple of different ways to approach that because that is what I'm seeing as well. There's a lot of, obviously it's very exciting when you get accepted onto a FAM or when you book your own personal trip and like the ideas are flowing, but then 6 months later, everyone has forgotten that you've gone to, this destination or you got to do that cool thing. And, I think there's a couple of different ways to approach it. To nobody's surprise, my favorite way is going to be like storytelling, leaning into the personal angle. But I actually just did this kind of by accident.
I know.
In my
I was
newsletter.
like, I opened your newsletter from last week and I was like, was this inspired by our upcoming podcast or is this totally just random? Because you were sharing photos from, I think, Tahiti.
2016.
From like
10 years.
Ages ago.
Yeah. So long ago. I had a pixie cut and I was 10 years younger. And so I wrote that down for our notes today because I was like, this is a perfect way. I just repurpose content because honestly, my brain is mush lately. I've been very busy and I think a lot of advisors can resonate with that, where you're like, I don't have an ounce of creativity left in my body, but I know a newsletter needs to go out or a social post needs to go up. And my favorite way to come up with new content is to reach back into the past. So I actually got a lot of replies to that newsletter because people are like, this is such a smart way to like reuse old content. It was just an old story about a time in Tahiti and a photo from that. And that newsletter took me like 10 minutes to do. So I think that is one fun way to pull out old content. And I literally came up with that newsletter idea because I was procrastinating on doing something else. And I was scrolling through old photos. And I was like, this would make a really good newsletter. So if you are sitting on a pile of content right now, and it feels like right now is a good time to talk about that trip, maybe we're in a good booking cycle for that trip, or you want to start building that part of your business a little bit more, or you're thinking, shoot, I spent a lot of money on that FAM and I haven't recouped any of it. I would say one easy way to do that is go back through your camera roll or your notes and look for a story that you can pull out and put it together as a newsletter or a blog or a social post or all three.
So
because that's going to be so easy to do.
I'm putting you on the spot here, but my brain does not work and like, just pull out a story. It's fine.
Yeah.
It'll take 10 minutes to write. I will now stress about pulling out a story for the next 3 days. And then I will stare at my computer for 3 hours and then sound like a very media. This is why I just pay for your services because like my brain is just. So when you say pull out a story, remind me what the Tahiti newsletter was about because it was not. My brain goes to what's a story I can tell about this trip, but your stories are always like very random and then it like pulls in Tahiti. So it's connected.
Yeah.
But I never feel like the origination of your story is the trip itself or there's always. So how do you do that? Can you help mold our brains? Can you help us be more like Kaytee?
Oh gosh. It's a wild time in here, but I will say, one of the best tricks I've learned for being a good storyteller, especially in long form marketing content like a newsletter, is you start in the middle of the story. So I didn't need to explain in that newsletter that this trip was, a big celebration because my husband was turning 30 and he had always wanted to go to Bora Bora. So we splurged on this trip. And like, I didn't need to start at the beginning. I just dropped you right into the middle of the story. And that's where like a good opening line or a hook comes in handy. That newsletter started with, I wish I was back in Tahiti. So people are like, wait, did I miss something? Did you go on a trip? And even if you did miss it, now I'm reminding you.
This is how I can start every one of my newsletters moving forward.
Yep.
Everybody be like, wait, when were you there? I know.
Perfect.
I know.
So even if you weren't in Tahiti 10 years ago, like I was, if you were in, let's say Costa Rica 6 months ago, that is a really great way to open a newsletter with, boy, do I wish I was back in whatever destination. Mm-hmm. And then you drop them into a single moment. I think where people tend to overthink storytelling, it's because they're trying to tell the whole story from A to Z, but instead pull out one feeling or one angle that you want to focus on. So, for example, a few minutes ago, I said that sometimes travel advisors focus too much on their own experience on the trip, which is obviously the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
But we should be turning it around so that the clients can see themselves there. So you could say, boy, I wish I was back in Costa Rica, except I would have packed differently. There you go. Tell the story of how you forgot to pack whatever. Maybe you forgot your bathing suit, which would be a wild pivot, or, bug spray or something like that. And then you pivot into the point of the newsletter, because we're not sending a newsletter just to tell a story about our trip to Costa Rica.
Right.
It should then relate to something they should know. 3 mistakes to avoid during your first trip to Costa Rica. Pack this, don't forget to pack that, don't travel during rainy season, whatever it may be. And then you end with your call to action of, if you're thinking about going to Costa Rica, this is the exact advice I would give you. Click here to inquire. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Now your newsletter's done. But you didn't just send like a trip recap. You don't want to be like, 6 months ago I went to Costa Rica. The best time to go is this month and this month. Here's a hotel. It's $850 a night. Like, people are just immediately going to click out. So yeah, the storytelling piece, if you're getting stuck with it, my favorite way to like think about old travel stories is to scroll through my camera roll and pick out an exact moment where I'm like, oh, that was funny, or that was really eye-opening, or, oh, I remember having a great conversation over dinner with somebody, and go from there.
Okay, this actually really helps me. Thank you for kind of trying to pull out not a strategy, but like an exercise or a trick or something. Because just as you said this, I thought of like 2 really funny stories of past trips of mine that I would, if I was talking with my marketing person, I would never be like, so I went on this hike and it absolutely started on this torrential downpour and started hailing on us, and I had to take off my jacket to protect my camera, and we just stood under a tree for 30 minutes and laughed about it, and we were freezing cold. Like, I would never be like, that's a story we should tell. But I was in Greece when it happened, and I was staying in a beautiful the hike was, on the property of the beautiful hotel. Like, I don't know what the call to action would be or what the point would be, but it's definitely a middle point of a story that I could probably tell.
Yeah.
And I have funny pictures of me stuck under a tree getting hailed on.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny that you mentioned the weather, because I remember when I was an advisor, for a minute, I was really good at blogging. But one of my blogs was about the importance of I had so many clients stress out over the weather. They would start looking at the weather app, and certain areas, especially the tropics, the weather app's not feasible. Like, it's not going to tell you the whole picture. And so
the weather's the weather. Like,
it is right.
Even if it is true and completely accurate, unless it's like a hurricane, unless it's a situation that you should not physically be there,
right. I mean, you
got to make the most of it.
Yeah. And so I wrote this blog post, and I included a photo of me and an old friend. We had gone to Hawaii together, and we rented a Jeep. We took the top off the Jeep and we drove road to Hana. It poured, and we had no top on our Jeep. So we had but it was hilarious because we have a picture of us just absolutely soaked, thumbs up. It was what it was. And so the whole blog post was about how we thought we were so cool and chic taking the top off this Jeep, which I'm pretty sure we were not supposed to do, and driving the road to Hana. And had I looked at the weather and stressed myself out, I would have missed out on that experience. And so, picking out one single moment and just telling the details that surround that moment. And then, of course, the hard part is figuring out how do you pivot to make it about the reader. But you can pull out, it doesn't always have to be a hard sell too. A weather-related newsletter or blog post can then just talk about the importance of being in the moment and the top 3 ways that you try to just be in the moment when you travel. And then your call to action can be, if you want to be in the moment without worrying about logistics, I can help you plan your trip to whatever.
Isn't for very structural black and white spreadsheet brains like mine, isn't this kind of where the content buckets come in?
Yeah.
Of just pick, instead of trying to connect them and know the answer up front, it's just pick a random story. Okay, I went on a hike and I started getting rained on, and it was kind of funny and it kind of sucked, but by the end of the day we were laughing about it. And then, what's the call to action? Well, here are the 6 options just based on my content buckets, based on what my expertise is, what I want to share with clients, what clients would feel valuable. So, I mean, it could be anything from seasons, it was in mainland Greece. So who should travel to mainland Greece? When should you go? Here's how to pack. Here are 3 tips. I'm planning a lot of Greece right now. I recommend you do this trip that I did in the fall, and here's why. The truffle hunting is bomb. Like you could kind of pull it back to just about anything if you almost like separate it, like find the funny story and then like just connect it to something that makes sense.
Yeah, there's essentially 3 pieces. It's the story, which is short and sweet. Again, I've seen a lot of advisors' newsletters, and sometimes I'm like, I'm still scrolling. It's like those blog posts, like recipe blog posts.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Where it's like you have to read about somebody's like 97-year-old Nana before you get to like the recipe. That's good and well, but like the story should be short, enough to give context to what you're about to pivot to, which is the second part. And then the third piece is that call to action. But yeah, there's so much that you could pull out of any fam trip or personal trip you've been on. You find your story. And I agree. I think almost figuring out what the call to action is going to be is best. And that's usually how I put my newsletters together. And then you can figure out that pivot piece. What do you want someone to take away from this piece of content aside from inquire with me? So things like what you do differently next time, or if I planned your trip here, here's 3 things I'd recommend, or who this trip is perfect for. So you're just, pivoting it back, turning the mirror around so the client can see themselves in the content.
Okay. So when we travel and we come home with hundreds, if not thousands of photos and videos, sometimes we have lots of ideas of what to talk about and sometimes we don't. I think that's like, you could almost just sit down and like whiteboard, brain dump different things. But I think we kind of just talked about the storytelling. How high level, how do you think of this strategically of like in the short term, medium term, and long term, how can we maximize the content opportunities with this trip and just like squeeze the most juice out of it to ensure that we are using all of the incredible content that we've just gathered, but also that we are generating business back to those partners, back to those hotels, back to that destination that we just invested all this time and money and resources in to go see and learn about. Like what high level, how would you strategically think about just maximizing the utmost capacity of every single trip that we're going on?
Yeah. I would say from a broader marketing perspective, blogging, and I am such a hypocrite for this because right now I'm not good at blogging, but I know blogging is so important for SEO and long term, like it lives on your website. So it's there. It doesn't disappear in an Instagram story after 24 hours. It's not as much as I love newsletters, like people read them and then they either delete them or save them, never to be looked at again. So, I mean, if I were still a travel advisor, I would get into the habit of writing a handful of blog posts about that trip. And I have recently just saw something I'd love to know a blogger's expertise on this, that you don't have to like publish blog posts every week. You can like put them all up at once and it just, lives forever. So I'm like, oh, I was thinking you had to do it like one at a time. But come home, batch a ton of blogs about the actual details of the trip, but also, what need does this trip meet for this type of client or traveler? What type of traveler is perfect for this destination or this hotel that you stayed at? What feelings did you feel? So I would definitely blog. And then from the blog, you can pull out social media posts, obviously, and not just stories, as much as I love stories. And I'm no social media expert, but posting on stories is great. But then, saving them to your highlights so people can go back to them, or you can call them out in the future instead of like digging for old photos and reposting stories. It's so easy to be like, oh, 3 months ago, I was on safari in South Africa. If you want to watch my trip back, it's in my highlights. Of course, you want to post about it on social media, a mixture of carousels and reels and all of that. But again, making sure that the content is about the client, because I am seeing way too many advisors. My screen time is ridiculous, and I'm watching all of you. But you're like, a lot of advisors are posting like where I stayed, what I ate, what I did, and they're never taking the client into account. It's just like, I stayed at this cool lodge, inquire here. Well, like, how do I know if I should inquire? Is it good for travelers like me? Is it good? I want to take my whole family. Can they stay there? So I think making sure
if we hypothetically took one of these posts that you've seen, and I know exactly what you're talking about, like, here's where I went, this is where I stayed, this is what I ate.
Yep.
if you're interested to go to this destination, reach out. How would you shift that exact same content to kind of make the client the hero of the story?
Yeah, I would just use very different language. Instead of, I got to stay at this lodge or I got to stay at this really cool hotel, I would say, stayed at, this property. Make sure you're tagging them. I think that's the polite thing to do. And then say, like, the whole time I was here, all I could think about is how this is perfect for my honeymooning clients. It's so quiet. It's so peaceful. It's so aesthetically pleasing. Like, instead of it being like, I loved it so much, this was life-changing, turning it around and being like, oh, I could not stop thinking about how perfect it would be for your ideal client. And then why? Why is it perfect for them? What pieces of this property or this experience made you think of your ideal client? And I think that's where a lot of people, they're posting the content, but they're not connecting it to the client experience or the client's needs.
Well, and so the client's needs are, it could be price point, it could be location, it could be accommodating their family or their, dynamic or whatever it is, or knowing what amenities are there or what's not there. I just saw another travel advisor who's really great on Instagram. And she said, my husband works out every single day, even on vacation. And so I checked out all the gyms on these river cruises. This is Kat Morga. And she was like, so if I was booking a river cruise for my husband, it'd be Riverside. They have the nicest gym. And I was like,
perfect.
That's genius, because that shows how you are thinking of all your different clients. And it's not, has a gym, yes or no, check here, has a spa, yes or no, check here. It's like, oh, if for all of my clients, and you know who you are and I know who you are, who love spa, this is the best spa in this region. Like this would be one of my top picks for you. Whereas if you're looking for something different, that's a rooftop bar, like, so I think I think it needs to come into specifics and like connect it to what clients are asking for.
Exactly.
And what they're looking for.
Sometimes we get really caught up, and I'm guilty of this too, in like, well, this is my business and I got to go on this trip and it's my experience, but we're going on these trips for our clients to learn more. And so while it's easy to get swept up, I'm not saying you have to remove yourself completely, but it's easy to get swept up in like the look at me type. There is a little bit of an ego part of it. It's exciting, right? To be like, look at me on safari or whatever. I get it. I was like, woo, look at me. But we have to make sure our clients are seeing us or seeing themselves in that content. So like the spa example you just gave, you could say, like, I went to Costa Rica in October with my mom, and the nap I had during my massage, I was like, I woke up and thought it was 3 years later. So instead of me being like, oh my gosh, best massage of my life, I could just, all I have to do is tweak the language a little bit and say, if you're looking for the best massage of your life, it's here at Rio Perdido in Costa Rica. And it's I just came here on a mother-daughter getaway, and it's perfect for slowing down, turning off your phone. Like, you're still telling them what you did, but it's in the context of what they need.
What they need, what they're looking for, what they're going to get excited about. And then I was going to, so that's kind of hitting the mark of what they need, and then hitting the mark of like putting them in the experience. Like this is where the description of the vibe and the aesthetic and the energy and the feeling that hotel has. Like some hotels are so quiet and so serene and so relaxing that's exactly what some people want. Whereas others are like, oh God, why is it you could hear a pin drop in here? This is terrible. Like we want some more like buzzy energy. And so that's what I've leaned into more and more, because you can't find those details online. The website's not telling you we play house music in the lobby, so when you walk in, you're going to be, bouncing a little bit. It doesn't tell you that. And you don't know until you walk in, and then you're like, oh, this is a different vibe than I was expecting.
Yeah. And, as far as then right after the trip, it's so easy to like post about it because you're still riding that high. It's all fresh. But let's say it's 3 to 6 months from now, and, you're like, okay, how do I bring this back up? I would say, obviously, you still need to be touching on that content occasionally. You shouldn't be like, all in and then crickets.
Right.
Like I should still kind of remember you went on that trip because it's mixed in, whatever.
Right.
But honestly, I would say the two best tools for revisiting old content is that nostalgia piece that we talked about and then the timeliness of it. So if we're coming up on a season where you're like, boy, I really should be seeing more Costa Rica inquiries come in right now.
Yeah.
Then you say, a few months ago, I was in Costa Rica. In case you forgot, here are my top 3 things that I recommend. If you're thinking about planning, like right now is a good time. Here's what you should be thinking about. We should be booking right now because of XYZ, or again, leaning into that storytelling where you're like, oh, I'm still recovering from that time, whatever happened. And so just bringing it up as a, like, almost, what was it like on, that was cool on Instagram a few years ago, Throwback Thursday or whatever it was. Like, we don't always need to be talking about the next trip or whatever. It just really is like a nostalgia / storytelling piece mixed with the strategy of booking cycles and timeliness. Right now we're coming off of spring break. And so it's going to be very easy to post about spring break right now. But obviously people can't book spring break for next year. It's too early. So in a few months, when, it's time to start thinking about spring break 2027, that's when you would pull out the spring break photos and the stories and all of that and start reaching back for those moments and memories that you can then connect to your audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you were sharing on the most recent podcast that we recorded a couple weeks ago about how powerful a PS is in a newsletter, and it could be as simple as like, here's what I'm booking right now, or here are the most common requests that I'm getting, or here's a cool itinerary that we just confirmed, or the clients are on right now, or whatever it is. Excuse me. So I have maybe like 5 or 6 destinations that I have this took forever to like figure out with my marketing person. It was like, what do we want to sell more of? What do we want to talk about like most often in terms of destinations? And then what do we actually have content for? And so for those, like, we have photos and videos for days. I can talk about it. I want to sell more of it. There's like only 5 or 6 destinations really fit, like tick, tick, tick across the board. So anytime that it's like, you looking to travel in the fall, here are my ideas. And you can guarantee half of those destinations are mentioned. You're looking for something to travel in the spring, here are my ideas. It's probably almost all the same ideas, but with a different twist related to the season.
Right. Shoulder season, high season, low season. If it's good for couples, good for families.
Exactly. Then it's like honeymoon ideas, same destinations. Multi-gen trips, same destinations. It's just a different twist. If you go on a honeymoon to South Africa, or you go on a 70th birthday to South Africa, what I'm going to suggest for you is different, but it's the same destination. So it's still photos of me in my safari hat.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like one of my favorite destinations is Costa Rica. And I would have couples come to me all the time like, oh, we want to spend, like, it's a cozy little jungly experience, and they want to go right in the middle of October. And I'm like, well, it's going to rain all day, every day up in the mountains, and so like that's 15 million pieces of content right there, where I would send you for your Costa Rican honeymoon if you wanted to go during rainy season. I could write a blog post about it, multiple Instagram posts about it, a whole newsletter about it. I think sometimes advisors want to cover too much ground too differently.
Or too quickly, like in too short of a time. Mm-hmm.
And the key to good marketing is, and you can fact check me on this, go ahead and Google it, but all the good marketers talk about, you just repeat yourself a million different ways. So if you want to sell a ton of Greece, talk about Greece every single different way you can, and just rotate through. Talk about the seasonality, who it's good for, who it's not good for. I think that's an important piece of marketing. I think sometimes we're so worried about targeting our ideal client that we forget to like actively repel the people we don't want, because of course they clog up our calendars and all that. So once in a while, throwing in a piece of content that helps people figure out that you are not a good fit for them, I think is just as important. But yeah, I think it's really important for advisors to remember that repetition, not only does it help you like get through all of your content that you have and kind of reduce that pile of content, but it builds that authority and trust with people, because now they've heard you talk about this destination 6 million different ways, and that familiarity builds that trust that leads to bookings. So I think sometimes we get a little in our own way because we want to cover so many things so quickly.
I don't know if your brain thinks about this like strategically. I'm someone who wants to make like really high level decisions really far in advance. So I'm someone who would come home and like on my way home from Greece, brain dump 65 ideas of what I could talk about and from which angle. And then I would just be like, okay, spread this out over the next 18 months so that like my brain, like, because that's the hardest brain energy for me is figuring out like what to talk about or what to say. Once that has been decided, then it's easy. Then it's like, okay, here's the photos, here's the call to action. Send it, you know? Do you think like this or like strategically, like, is there, I don't want to say that there's like a silver bullet to this and that it's just so easy and that everybody can like go execute this. But like, if we thought about trying to like systematize or simplify this in a way that could almost be repeated with every single FAM or trip that advisors are going on. And maybe the content they bring home from a smaller trip is 6 or 8 months. And maybe when it's a huge trip, it's like 12 to 18 months. But if it's just like a very simple, every time you come home, do this and think about this, and guaranteed this content and this destination is going to like live its fullest life for the next 12 to 18 months. Like,
I would say that
you approach that.
I would say the easiest way because I get overwhelmed when there's too many moving parts. I actually don't plan my content too far in advance just because things are always changing. I certainly don't schedule content too far in advance just because things are always changing and shifting, and that's especially true for advisors. But I think if you wanted to, like you said, brain dump a million different ideas, and then you have that peace of mind of knowing, okay, the trip is fresh, I put it all into a safe place. I would say use those 3 parts that we talked about. Brain dump all of your stories and just you don't have to write the full thing, but just get like a little note out. Write down a couple of different ways, the more the merrier, that you can talk about this destination or this experience. And then write down 5 or 6 calls to action that aren't just inquire now. Like you could say, hit reply so we can have a quick chat. If you want to have a quick chat about Greece in off season or something like that, write down a handful of calls to action that you can rotate through. And then the 4th piece, I would say, is at least go through and make a note of when it makes the most sense to talk about that. So if you're going to talk about Greece in off season, you don't want to talk about it when it doesn't make sense to book it. So you want to think about booking cycles, seasonality, and kind of look at it from a perspective of a literal calendar of like, okay, when do I want to start driving bookings for this destination or this experience? And that's when you should be talking about it. And then you just go to this, maybe it's a Google Doc or an Excel sheet or whatever it may be, an Airtable, a ClickUp, however you store all of this, you find a story, you find a call to action, and you find that pivot piece and you fit it together and you send it out or you post it. And I think that's honestly the easiest way to manage your content. That is how I manage my content, both as an advisor, when I was an advisor and now running Moxie and Forth, is I at least know what do I need to be talking about right now. And then I have those 3 pieces always figured out. I've got a running list of stories, both from my boring daily life and from travel. I always know what I'm going to be talking about. And then I have my call to action. And it really, whether you're talking about a newsletter or a social post, that kind of like 3-tiered system will always work because then you have your buckets essentially.
Yeah. And I think that what you've described works for every single trip. We don't have to reinvent the wheel if one trip is Costa Rica and the next trip is Italy. Yeah. It's the same process of find your stories, make little voice notes or take down little notes of what that story is. So that would be unique to each trip, the stories that you have.
Yep.
But taking a little bit of time to think through the stories and note them down is the same like task on the mental checklist of what to do on your way home. And then how you talk about that destination, that's almost like 80% the same no matter where you're going. What to do here, what are the cool experiences, when to go, who's it best for, who's it not best for, how much is it going to cost, what are the seasons? Like I actually have like 12 questions and it doesn't change by destination. I just run through. And if one of them is not relevant for that destination for whatever reason, I just skip it. But you don't need a whole new list of questions just because you're in a different destination.
Yeah. If you always have this like repeatable framework of, what knowledge or, stories do you want to make sure get shared, then you just, I live and die by my Apple Notes app. And I honestly, if I were still booking travel, as soon as I get on the plane to go home, that's what I would be doing because it's all fresh. If you tell yourself, I'll do it when I get home and all that, you will not do it. So just, or my favorite way to do it is I know FAMs they're long days, they're exhausting, but at the end of the day, I did this when I went on a South Africa FAM. I was so tired. Anyone who's been on a South Africa FAM knows you get up so early for game drives. You go to bed so late after long dinners. I still made myself do 15 to 20 minutes of brain dumping every night. What happened today? What client would this be good for? All of those things that we just talked about. And then you sleep like a baby because you're not like, okay, I'll remember it in the morning. No, you won't. You're so tired. You're going to get home, your inbox is overflowing. And then pretty soon it's 6 months later and you haven't posted or shared about that trip at all. So I think that's the easiest method is just getting those stories out and then figuring out how you're going to use them to talk about that destination.
I think that I've talked about this topic with Brianna a lot because she's very good at posting in the moment, like while she's on a trip. So you always know when she's traveling and you never know that I'm traveling. And like, it's just, so as we were discussing it one time, I think she thought that I was lacking strategy of like, I'm not really sure what to do. Therefore I don't do anything. And I was like, oh no, I've got the whole strategy. I know exactly what to post, when to post, what to say. I know what shots to capture. I'm actually very like, if there's any part of this process that I feel like I'm really good at, it's capturing the content.
Yeah.
Like I have videos that go together really well, like a beautiful like video, not just an Instagram reel of a bunch of cuts put together, but like telling a story through a video. Like I actually really, I took a video course 10 years ago. Like that's something that I'm like really interested in and I love, but no one ever sees it. And so it's not the strategy that I'm lacking. It's also not photo or video like skills in terms of like what to capture and making sure it's high quality. It's the actual time to execute. And it's still not perfect for me, but once I really like realized that that's where things fell apart was the actual execution, I hired help.
I was just about to say, then if it's something I actually am, after we're done recording this podcast, the next thing on my list is I'm outsourcing a big task because like, would I save money by doing it myself? Sure. But I'm not going to make money unless it gets done. And so I think that's a big thing that is kind of adjacent to this conversation we're having is if you are struggling with this and you think, well, it's okay, no one noticed. Right. Nobody noticed. They didn't know you went on that trip. And so you're losing sales because of it. So this is like, I hate this, such like a bro comment, but you got to spend money to make money. And that's true when it comes to outsourcing something that is your weak point.
And I think you could just flip the perspective on this as well as like it costs money to go on a FAM. And so a lot of people are like, well, but I really enjoyed it. It was a great experience. It was a great trip. That's cool. This isn't a hobby. This is a business.
Exactly.
And the whole purpose of going on that trip is to generate more sales and more interest from your clients into that destination. And that's what the partners who are inviting you and hosting you on the FAM are expecting.
Right. Because it's not just your ROI. It's their ROI
it's theirs
as well.
I actually do not envy the suppliers being in the supplier's shoes in this situation because I cannot imagine how difficult it is to choose who to invite because that's a whole like Pandora's box of what you want your strategy to be. And second, watching advisors come and then not do anything afterwards.
Right. And I it's like I said, people are going to listen to this and be like, Kaytee is so creepy. Because I watch everybody's stories because I'm over here making notes on what are advisors saying they're struggling with? What do I see you struggling with? And just to stay in touch with, I don't book anymore. So staying close to the industry allows me to, be a helpful resource. And unfortunately, I am seeing a lot of people almost treat FAMs like vacations. And look, it's so exciting to go on a FAM, especially if it's like a big bucket list type of trip. But it's not a vacation. You're working. This is your job. And you do have to be, doing.
I don't want to say that you shouldn't be excited to go on a really cool
Absolutely.
FAM, but it's a both and. Be excited about this incredible opportunity and lean into doing everything you possibly can to support those partners who have invited you and to support your own business, because it's not just about the money that it costs to like physically get yourself there and go on the FAM. It's also the time away from your business and away from your inbox and away from your friends and family. Like it is a huge investment. And if that, I don't think that there's a single advisor that I know of that is 100% absolutely maximizing the capacity of all of their knowledge and expertise and content on every trip that they go on. And perfection is not the goal, but I think that we could all do a little bit more and we would reap the rewards. Like business would come in, more FAM invitations would come in, like it would be a win-win-win across the board. So I think understanding like the strategy, and if you need help with the strategy, that's what someone like Kaytee is perfect for. If you need help with the actual content of like, I don't really take great photos, I don't really take great videos, there are resources for that.
So many.
Like that's probably the easiest resource to find, I think, of like how to take great photos on your iPhone.
Yeah. And that's part of being a good business owner is, if you don't know how to do something, you either outsource it or you figure it out, because you can't just say, well, I don't know how. Then maybe.
I love this version of Kaytee. Outsource it or figure it out.
I am tapping into my spicier side, because like one of my pet peeves is seeing people open a business, run a business, and not make money. What are we doing here? Like, no, just go work a 9 to 5 and then you can have a normal life. Why are we torturing ourselves?
Yes.
Because being an entrepreneur, it's a lot.
It's optional. So if you're opting into it, no, I really, that just simplifies things and it makes it so easy. Outsource it or figure it out.
Yeah.
Saying that you don't know a strategy for content, like how to come home and talk about a trip, outsource it or figure it out. There are resources for that. Saying you don't take good photos or good videos or whatever, outsource it or figure it out. And for me, it was I have the strategy, I have great content. I don't have the time, nor the will, nor the interest to sit down and write blogs and newsletters. So I outsourced it.
Exactly. Well, and then because the alternative is you just saying over and over again, like, oh, no bookings are coming in. Well, yeah. And people approach me all the time. Advisors DM me and email me, and I always accept their messages with kindness, but then also honesty. Like, well, I just looked at your Instagram and I'm on your email list. You're not talking about any of this. And what you're not talking about, people will not book. You have to just be everywhere all the time with the same content over and over again. And so that's where a lot of people are like, well, no bookings are coming in. It's, well, what are we doing about it?
Yeah.
So
I will say a lot of people have heard me talking about wanting to increase my Safari business. My Safari business is increasing. The number of inquiries that I have received is increasing. The number of bookings I have on the books for this year, next year is increasing. And just last night, I ran into a friend who was with an acquaintance. So someone I like know on Instagram, but I hadn't actually met her before. And she said, and I quote, I'm not making this up, I was just on your Instagram looking at your Safari content. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
So it like Olivia and I, my marketing content person, I feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall at this point about the Safari stuff. And I'm constantly like, is it too much? It's not too much.
It's not. If you're thinking, is it too much? I would say do more. Because it is so funny to me. I just finished enrollment for my program. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am the most annoying person ever. Like, let me just send another email about it. Yeah, well, it's sold out. And so it's, yes, will someone be like, oh my gosh, stop talking about safaris? Sure. Then they can unfollow or unsubscribe. They're not going to go on a safari if they don't want to hear about it. But even if someone's not ready or willing to go on a safari, if they are your ideal client and they enjoy your vibe, your energy, the way you approach business, the way you show up online, they're going to stick around. I worry more about the people who are going to buy than the people who might not want to hear from me. And I think perfectionism and fear of being perceived are two things that hold advisors back a lot. They're like, well, I don't want to be annoying. Well, I want to make money. And if being annoying is a piece of that, I don't know. I think Chase Bank, they're going to want their mortgage payment either way. And so
they're annoying about it.
They're going to be annoying when they're trying to take my home. So like, I think a lot of people are like, ooh, and I always tell advisors, okay, yes, maybe you feel annoying, but nobody's really paying attention. Like, you're not. If an influencer can post 75 times about their Bloom powder or whatever it is they take every day, you can post about your trips, your FAMs, your expertise, because at the end of the day, we need to put food on the table. And we can talk about strategy all day, but you have to, I think, want it. You have to want your business to thrive at the end of the day.
So I will share one little tip that has worked for me as someone who is very good at capturing content, but not very good at like getting in front of the camera because early morning wake up calls, short nights, very long days. The last thing for me personally that I'm going to do is like get up and make myself look all cute for a photo. I will be there, coffee in hand, and like I am engaging and happy to be there. I don't look photo ready all the time. Right. So, but what I started doing a few years ago is just committing to one decent photo of myself per day of the fam.
That's perfect.
Just one. I'm never dressed up. I'm never like, I'm just wearing what I'm wearing. But I am in like a decent position that I look at the photo and I like it. I'm not like, ew, we'll never use that. Like I get a good one. The scenery or the setting is good. You know, like it's helpful. It's going to be supportive. So whether it's like beautiful scenery or whether it's me eating something cool in the destination, it's a photo of me in the destination that I'm willing to share.
Yep.
That's all.
And you're good to go.
One per day.
Yep.
And I think I had a lot of like, I felt a lot of pressure prior to that thinking I need to come home with like 75 photos of myself looking cute and all these things. And like the reality is when I go on a 10-day trip and come home with 10 photos, that is more than enough.
Honestly, I think I'm going to steal this tip because every time my husband and I go on a trip, oh my gosh, I'm like, how could you take that photo of me? But if he just gets one good one, that would save me a lot of stress and he'd probably feel better too.
And usually there's someone in the fam that I like tell that like, this is my goal. And then I make sure they get one per day. And so they help me get the photo. I help them get the photo. And then my marketing person is happy when I come home. I'm happy with the photos that she's sharing and she doesn't have to like show them to me first, you know,
right?
All that kind of nonsense. And so kind of after talking with you today, what I'm going to add to this is one story per day. Yeah. Like what happened today? What did I eat? What did I see? What did I do? And maybe I use it in future marketing or maybe I don't, but like note down one story. And it'll be easier later on.
Yeah. And oftentimes the content you don't stress out about so much is the content that performs the best. There are reels and carousels and newsletters I have spent endless hours on and they flop. And then the ones that I'm like, whatever, it's going on the grid. That's the one that gets hundreds of likes and saves. And I'm like, okay, cool. Great. Amazing.
Cool.
So
thanks guys. Thanks.
So sometimes, you know, if you're just feeling like, I don't know, it doesn't look good, just post it. It's okay. Just send the newsletter, just post the post, put the story up. Because being imperfectly visible is so much better than never showing up at all. So
I love that. Kaytee, you've got something coming up in May that is right along the lines of this topic. Tell us more about it.
Yeah. So on May 6th, I will be co-hosting a workshop called the FAM Marketing Playbook with Caroline Langdon from Impact Media House. She is my social media goddess. I would be in the corner crying without her. And we are putting together a framework that advisors can attend this workshop once and use it forever. So we're going to be walking you through what to do leading up to the FAM, what to do during the FAM, and then how to carry that content months and months forward, both on social media and via email marketing. The resources are bonkers. I can't say what they are, but they're insane. And it will be recorded and all that good stuff. But we are really hoping to help alleviate this ongoing issue of advisors spending their hard-earned money on FAMs and then not recouping the investment. So, yeah.
And or just wanting to recoup the investment, but then feeling stressed about
it removes all
do
of that. The overwhelm and what should I post, and not even what should I post, what should I send, but how to actually accumulate the content that you need along the way so that doing
Right.
it later on feels easy.
Amazing. How can people learn more about it? Do we just need to follow you on Instagram and then you're going to get really annoying for about a week so we
I
can learn
absolutely
everything?
am. Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm gonna talk about it all the time, incessantly.
Honestly, I'm joking. I don't mean that you're annoying. I appreciate it because sometimes when I'm trying to find something, I'm like looking for it and I can't find the post or the information. So if you have like, rows and rows of it on your Instagram for a couple weeks, it's so much easier to find.
Yes. Yep. Of course, my email list will always be, hear about it.
Perfect.
And then there will be information on my website as well.
Amazing. Kaytee, thank you so much for diving into this with me today. I love that I'm hearing this pain point, you're hearing this pain point, and you're co-hosting a workshop on it. So hopefully all of this kind of combined will feel supportive for everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.